Hello everybody, this is Kirby over Yonder, and this is every episode of Wander Over Yonder Ranked. We have 79 episodes to discuss, but before that, just a few quick disclaimers. First up, with the exception of maybe the bottom two, I enjoy basically every episode of Wander Over Yonder. There are just some that I like more than others, so if it seems like I'm a little harsh to some of the lower episodes on this list, just know that I still mostly like them, they're just not as good in comparison. Also, some of these reviews might seem a little short, and that's simply because there are some episodes that I just don't have a ton to say about, and because there are 79 episodes to talk about, I don't want to spend too much time dwelling on one single episode. And if you like Wander Over Yonder, I highly recommend you check out Craig McCracken's latest show, Kid Cosmic. By the time I'm recording this, its third and final season actually just finished up, and I highly recommend it. It's absolutely excellent. It takes everything we know about the superhero genre and completely flips it on its head, and in ways I've never seen done before. It's super fun and compelling all the way through, and I might give it its own ranking video one day. We'll see about that. But for now, this is every episode of Wander Over Yonder Ranked. Number 79, The Troll. The whole don't feed the troll message is perfectly fine, but what absolutely kills this episode for me is Wander himself. The episode could have been over so quickly if Wander had simply told them what his plan was, instead of just doing nothing, and the fact that he doesn't just feels very forced to me. Also, this troll guy is just kind of annoying, which I get was probably the point, but it doesn't really make for a fun antagonist. Number 78, The Lonely Planet. Anyone else find this one to be just kinda unpleasant? I don't know, the way Janet obsesses over Wander always kinda felt uncomfortable to me. That and the way it treats Sylvia just makes me want to avoid this episode whenever I rewatch the show. Number 77, The Toddler. It's the baby episode, which means it's kind of just annoying and gross. Still though, I like the message that it's okay to say no to kids. I think some parents and caretakers can certainly learn from that. Also, the mall is a pretty fun setting, I just wish it was used in a better episode. Number 76, The Sick Day. I really like the idea here of Sylvia having to do all of Wander's chores for him. And some of the callbacks to previous episodes are actually really cool. But the use of gross out here is what ruins it for me. Seeing Wander like this makes me really uncomfortable, which makes The Sick Day my least favorite Season 2 episode. Number 75, The Enemies. This is another one with a cool idea. I really like the concept of Lord Hater having to team up with Brad Starlight. But in execution, a lot of it is just watching the characters goof around, which is still funny, but it feels a little bit like wasted potential to me. Number 74, The Egg. I really like the sun in this episode, but otherwise it's a little too slow and repetitive for my liking. Plus, I feel that the ending was a little rushed. I will give it, however, that it is a pretty early episode, and as such, it does a decent job establishing Wander and Sylvia's dynamic. Number 73, The Robo-Mecha Botatron. This episode feels like all setup, no payoff. I really like the concept of the four main characters having to team up, and we get some fun interactions out of that. But at the end of the day, not much actually happens in this episode, leading to the whole thing feeling kinda underwhelming. Also, between this and the Rick and Morty episode, I've had to talk about two entirely different Voltron parodies in the span of like a month-ish, which is really funny because otherwise I don't think I've ever watched anything Voltron related in my life. Number 72, The Tourist. This is another one that's just a little too repetitive for my liking, but I think Wander's realization was handled very well and was genuinely touching. Plus, that twist at the end always gets a good laugh out of me. Number 71, The Loose Screw. I find most of this episode to be kinda boring, but once we get to the end, then it gets really fun. Number 70, The Hot Shot. I find the main plot of this episode to be kinda generic. You know, the whole main character is suspicious of a newcomer, but everyone else thinks they're just jealous trope. I mean, this is basically just a weaker version of Ricardio the Heart Guy from Adventure Time. But it's cool to see Brad Starlight come back one last time, and him mimicking Wander and Sylvia's shtick is an interesting concept. Plus the song is really good. Number 69, Nice, The Cool Guy. This is another one with a bit of a generic plot, with Hater abandoning Peepers to hang out with Emperor Awesome. But hey, it's still a pretty funny episode, and plus I really like seeing Hater stand up for Peepers at the end. It's a good moment. Number 68, The Greatest. This is the very first episode of Wander Over Yonder, and as such, I think it does a great job introducing the characters and the ways they play off of each other, but at a cost. Because going back to this one, I find it to be just a little too generic. There's not much that really stands out about it other than it just being the first episode. But at the end of the day, it's still a fun episode and a solid start to the series. Number 67, The Night. It's pretty fun watching Wander try and prevent Sylvia from waking up. It's a classic cartoon plot that simply works. And it's cool how it loops back around to the previous episode. It also has this horrifying scene. Number 66, The Prisoner. This is a pretty fun Commander Peepers Spotlight episode that tells us a lot about him and his dynamic with Lord Hater. This is also our first real glimpse at the Skull Ship, a pretty fun and interesting location. Number 65, The Bad Neighbors. This is a very sitcom-y episode that I don't have a ton to say about other than it's just really funny. Number 64, The Birthday Boy. I love the happy birthday song in this episode. I usually send it to my friends when it's one of their birthdays. And even aside from that, it's still really fun watching Wander narrowly avoid being killed in the Doom Arena. Number 63, The Axe. This is another solid Peepers Spotlight episode that does a great job showcasing why he and Lord Hater need each other. Number 62, The Rager. Another solid, fun episode. I love just how stupid Hater's disguise is. Number 61, The Liar. Wander trying to save a bunch of birds from a volcano is a very simple concept that does a great job pushing him to his limits. Plus, that ending is really funny. Number 60, The Buddies. It's really funny just how uncomfortable Lord Hater is with pretending to be Wander's friend. And like always, the song is great. Number 59, The Stray. I really like Little Bits as an antagonist. Innocent-seeming characters who are actually villains are always fun. Wander being manipulated into helping a villain is a very natural story for his character. Plus, the climax is really funny. Number 58, The Day. This is a really cool spotlight episode for Sylvia. It's fun watching her try and break out of Hater's ship. Plus, all the shenanigans with Wander being asleep are very funny. Number 56, The Party Animal. This is another great Sylvia episode. Her outfit in this one is really funny, as is the idea of Emperor Awesome making the planet party to death. The dance competition at the end between him and Wander is really funny and well animated. Number 56, The Funk. Lord Hater is basically just an angsty teen in this one, and I love it. But this part is easily the highlight of the episode. It's just so weird and visually interesting and comes out of nowhere. I'm honestly surprised Disney allowed it. I guess the funk is a bit of a one-scene wonder, but hey, the rest of the episode is still fun. Number 55, The Fugitives. This is another solid early episode that does a great job establishing Wander and Sylvia as characters and their dynamic with each other. That Wander will do anything to help anyone in need, and Sylvia, while not necessarily selfish, is more focused on the bigger picture. But at the end of the day, the two still need each other, because Wander brings out the good in Sylvia, and Sylvia helps keep Wander safe. I also enjoy seeing how Wander's good deeds come back to save him and Sylvia in the climax. Number 54, The Sky Guy. This episode has a really neat story, sort of akin to the Godfellas episode of Futurama. It's cool to see how Wander's presence affects the Biddy people, how they get into this huge race war because of him. Plus, Neckbeard is a really funny character. Number 53, The Rival. I don't really have much to say about this one, it's just really funny. Number 52, The Picnic. This episode does a good job setting up the dynamic between Wander and Lord Hater. There are some classic jokes here too. I love just how casual this wish deity is. Number 51, The Fancy Party. Queen Entozoa is a really funny character, and seeing Hater try and suck up to her is always funny. Number 50, The Search for Captain Tim. It was a neat idea to give Captain Tim a spotlight episode, since by this point in the series you kind of forget that he's there. Ripoff is a very fun character as well. I really enjoy her dynamic with Hater. It's also cool how the events of this episode were foreshadowed just a few episodes before it. Number 49, The Helper. The idea of this town that just doesn't need Wander's help at all is really funny, and feels very natural for Wander as a character. The making a movie about making a movie gag gets me every time. The ending is also just so absurd that it's hilarious. Number 48, The Catastrophe. This is a really fun second appearance for Little Bit. Her using her adorable cat videos to mind control everyone is a very funny concept. It's also very fun seeing Sylvia try and use slapstick to break everyone free. I also love the jellyfish migration scene at the end, it's really beautiful. Number 47, The It. This is another one that I don't have a ton to say about other than it just being really funny. The fact that Hater was able to take over multiple planets just because nobody else wanted to be it is genuinely comedy gold. Number 46, The End of the Galaxy. As a finale, I have very mixed thoughts on The End of the Galaxy. I think my main problem with it is the way it handled Lord Hater. Seeing him actually try and save everyone is a genuinely great moment for his character, but I kinda hate how he goes back to the status quo at the end when there was really no reason for him to. I mean, it's the series finale. I also kinda wish Wander himself was a bit more involved. The fact that he's frozen throughout most of the episode means he doesn't really get a ton to do. And yeah, that cliffhanger at the end still stings a little bit, but I've sort of gotten over that by now. Plus, we've got Kid Cosmic now, which in many ways fills the Wander-shaped hole in my heart. And Craig McCracken will probably continue to work on new Netflix cartoons in the future, which is very exciting. And going back to The End of the Galaxy with that mindset, while I still have my problems with it, I'm able to enjoy it more for what it is than complain about what it could have been. This is still a really epic finale with such a grand scope, fun callbacks to earlier episodes, great action sequences, and interesting character turns for Hater and Dominator. At this point, I think it's very unlikely for Wander Over Yonder to ever come back, but honestly, if this is the note it ends on, well, you could do a lot worse for a series finale. Cough cough, Samurai Jack. At number 45, we have The Showstopper. This is one of those rare times in which Wander and Hater actually team up, which is really fun. I'm always a sucker for that hero and villain team-up trope. But even more fun is seeing Sylvia and Commander Peepers team up again. Their dynamic is always very enjoyable. I also like seeing Wander control Lord Hater like a puppet, it's a really funny visual. Number 44, The Secret Planet. This episode is pretty fun as we get to see Wander take part in a bunch of wacky shenanigans just so he can keep the planet a secret. It's also cool because the planet itself will also be very important in the series finale. It's always neat when a relatively silly episode is used to set up something important. Isn't that right, Death and Bloom? At number 43, we have The Eye on the Skull Ship. This is a really fun episode used to highlight the Watchdogs. And Andy makes for a very likable protagonist. Number 42, The Party Poopers. This episode is basically just 11 minutes of butt jokes, but very tastefully done butt jokes. The comedy is more in seeing Wander's reaction to all the butt-related imagery than the butt-related imagery itself. And it uses these butt jokes to tell an actually very nice message about finding ways to laugh during hard times, which I feel like is a message we could all definitely use at this point in time. And because of that, this episode actually holds up very well despite being somewhat immature in nature. Number 41, The Good Deed. This is a good episode demonstrating the butterfly effect. How every good deed that Wander does leads to something even worse happening. Plus, that climax is really cinematic feeling. Number 40, The Date. This is another one that's simply really funny. This fast-forward gag especially gets me every time. It also shows off the more insecure and lonely side of Lord Hater, which is neat. Number 39, The Gift 2, The Giftening. While not as good as The Gift, this episode is still really fun. It's great seeing Hater and Peepers freak out over something as mundane as a bunch of watchdogs getting gifts. And the fact that the episode still plays it relatively straight just makes it even funnier. Number 38, The Big Day. Seeing Wander and Hater treat Wander's death like a wedding is just comedy gold. Not much else to say really, it's just a funny concept that's executed really well. Number 37, The Bad Guy. Wander pretending to be this big bad guy is just another really funny concept. Made even funnier by the fact that his ruse actually ends up working almost too well, which you wouldn't expect. Number 36, The Hat. This is another great Sylvia-focused episode as we see her try and save Wander. It's also cool to get a bit of added lore for Wander's hat, how it only gives you what you need and not necessarily what you want. This episode actually does a pretty great job giving the hat some characterization. Number 35, The Heebie-Jeebies. I love the atmosphere of the spooky forest in this episode, not to mention all of Wander's great facial expressions. Also love the design of these ghost mimes, they're really cool. Number 34, The Good Bad Guy. Seeing Hater be forced to reconcile with the fact that his idol may have been converted to good by Wander is really funny. Not to mention it has this beautiful scene. Number 33, The Bounty. I really like the designs of these bounty hunter characters, they're really cool looking. It's also cool to see Planty the Potted Plant from Phineas and Ferb make his triumphant return here. It's interesting to see all the ways he developed after defeating Doofenshmirtz. And this is also another great Commander Peepers episode. It's cool seeing him find ways to defeat all the other bounty hunters. Number 32, The Little Guy. This is just a nice, quaint little story about Wander and Sylvia helping a watchdog see the error in his ways. I really like Wesley, I think he's a very endearing character and I wish he appeared more after this episode. Number 31, The Family Reunion. Sylvia's family members are really funny characters and it's fun to see all the ways in which they bounce off of Wander. And I also really like the moment at the end between Sylvia and her mom, it's really sweet. Number 30, The Hero. This is a great episode mocking common fairy tale tropes. Brad Starlight is honestly such a man-child that it's great to see him get what he deserves in the end. Number 29, The Framergency Fraunfracht. I hate that title. Watching Hater act all loopy is really funny. And it's cool seeing them recreate the theme song but with Hater. But it's also really sad when Wander makes Hater leave. Since much like Wander, you want to believe that Hater can still be good, but know that he's only acting this way temporarily. Number 28, The Big Job. I just love seeing such an innocent character like Wander being thrown into such serious situations. Seeing him almost screw up this big heist through wacky shenanigans is just really funny. Number 27, The Epic Quest of Unfathomable Difficulty. It's honestly hilarious how a task as mundane as trying to find the owner of a sock can spiral into one of the craziest 11 minutes of television I've ever watched. This episode is just cuckoo bananas all the way through, and I love it for that. Number 26, The Nice Guy. Wander trying to partake in a very simple task but being distracted by helping others is just another natural feeling story for his character. It's great how an episode that primarily takes place in one location can still have so many different twists and turns. Number 25, The Ball. This episode can go from a serious tragedy to just a dog playing with a ball in a matter of seconds. It's just great use of juxtaposition. Plus, Wander's big freakout at the end is really darkly funny, especially since it looks like he's about to kamikaze the ship. Number 24, The Whole Lot of Nothing. Seeing Hater annoy Wander for a change is a great role reversal. He's just so hilariously petty in this one. Number 23, The Bad Hatter. Much like The Hat, this is another great episode that gives us some interesting lore about Wander's hat. How he actually stole it from two people fighting over it during the Civil War. It's interesting to learn that Wander would actually do something that isn't considered morally good, like stealing, for the sake of the greater good. It adds a bit of complexity to his character. It also has this glorious scene. Number 22, The Black Cube. It's great how this show can make us feel so much sympathy for a cube, a character who not only doesn't talk, but one who, before this episode, was mostly just seen as a joke. I love the decision to have most of this episode be in black and white, symbolic of the way everyone views the cube. Then when people learn that he's more than he seems, it goes back to color. It's just a really beautiful episode. Number 21, The Boy Wander. Seeing Wander pretend to be the super serious Batman-esque superhero is really fun. Between this, the Powerpuff Girls, and Kid Cosmic, you can really tell that Craig McCracken is a big fan of the superhero genre. Weird Al as Dr. Screwball Jones is just great. You can tell he had a lot of fun in this role. Though it's weird how this is the second time Weird Al has played a cartoon banana. The big musical battle between him and Wander is really fun and has some great visuals. Plus, the way the song ends is really funny. It gets me every time. Number 20, The Legend. I love all the different art styles used for the kids' stories. This episode gets very visually creative. I love just how off the wall this one in particular is. I also love the moral of this one, that sometimes it's okay to just let people believe something that isn't true, as long as it's bringing them happiness. Just as long as said beliefs aren't hurting anyone, of course. Number 19, The New Toy. This is another one that's simply really funny. The fact that someone behind the show made a toy based on the Hate RV, just to use it for this one gag with no intention on actually selling it, is really funny to me. I also love the way Hater just ends up giving it to Dominator at the end. He has one brain cell and he's not even using it. Number 18, The Battle Royale. I will brutally murder anyone who makes a Fortnite joke. Anyways, this episode just feels really big. It's cool to see all these villains fighting in one place. There's some great action here. This is also the episode that reveals who Lord Dominator actually is, and Hater's reaction cracks me up every time. Number 17, The Gift. Honestly, I'm not completely sure why I like this episode so much. I guess there's just something I find really pleasant about it, watching Wander and Sylvia deliver gifts around and making people happy. Plus, we get a bunch of different cameos from characters we met all throughout the first season, making this one basically just a better version of The Sick Day. I definitely recommend anyone to check this out during the holidays. Number 16, The Bots. Watching Wander deteriorate the longer he has to wait to open this bots is just comedy gold. I love the art style and animation used for this fantasy sequence. And I enjoy the way the moral of the episode is completely flipped on its head. Because, like, yeah, it's really stupid that these guys made Wander and Sylvia do this whole song and dance just because they thought Wander needed a lesson. The Bots takes a very relatable concept of wanting to know what's inside the bots, and just goes all out with it, making for a very funny and unpredictable episode. Number 15, The Rider. Will Arnett does a great job as Rider. I mean, he is the horse from Horsin' Around, after all. He's the perfect amount of cocky and smug, but also weirdly charming. And since this is one of the few 22-minute episodes, we're allowed to get a lot of variety in the locations. There's just a lot going on here. And I really like the way in which this episode tests Wander and Sylvia's friendship. Ryder is the type of person that Sylvia could become if she didn't have Wander. And while that may sound fun in the short term, in the long term, Wander is the person who brings out the best in Sylvia. It's just a really fun episode with a very well told story. Number 14, The Greater Hater. This is all around just a fantastic start to Season 2. Dominator makes for such an intimidating threat here, and I think that's because she's the first villain on the show to not be a joke. Like, this is only her first appearance, and she almost flat out kills Wander. It's also fun watching the characters explore her ship. It's an interesting new location. And it's always great to see Wander's endless optimism be challenged for a change. And I love how the episode just ends with our four main characters being in complete shock over what they had just been through. A great season premiere as a whole. Number 13, The Night Out. This is definitely one of the more underrated episodes, in my opinion. Sylvia and Dominator make for a surprisingly compelling character pairing. I love seeing this new side to Dominator, the side of her that actually does want to hang out with other people. And I don't know, this episode just has such a different vibe to it than all the others. I like it. It's not gonna be everyone's cup of tea, but if you're interested in a more hangout episode of Wander Over Yonder, check this one out. Number 12, The Breakfast. This is an episode with a very simple concept executed beautifully. It's really fun comparing and contrasting all the ways in which Wander and Hater go about their everyday routine. How Wander makes the most out of a bad situation compared to Hater, who struggles with just about every task. Again, it's definitely simple, but it's just a really nice episode to vibe with. Number 11, The Brainstorm. This episode is basically just a series of vignettes as Lord Hater and Commander Peepers try to think of ways to defeat Yonder. It's another simple concept that's executed really well, making for one of the funniest episodes of the series in my opinion. I love just how absurd some of these can get. Plus, come on, how can you argue against the Banjo episode? Number 10, The Flower. This is a very interesting episode, as it's possibly the only episode in the series in which we see Yonder genuinely be sad. It's actually kinda off-putting seeing Yonder be this sad. But it thankfully doesn't last for too long, as most of the episode is about Yonder and Sylvia trying to keep this flower alive. It's their last remnant of hope now that Dominator has conquered most of the galaxy. And I love the moral that just because someone is sad doesn't mean they've given up on things. It's okay to be sad. And man, that last shot is frankly beautiful. Number 9, The Pet. This is easily the darkest episode of Wander Over Yonder. Like, at a certain point in the episode, Sylvia will just flat out believe that Wander is dead. And while we know that he's not, it takes her a really long time to figure out the truth. It's fun seeing her become this cool action hero. The inside of the ship also looks really cool, very well designed. And while the episode does get pretty dark, Wander's lighthearted attitude does a good job balancing it out. Oh, and I also really like the song in this episode. I find myself humming it quite frequently. Number 8, The Matchmaker. This is easily one of the most creative episodes in the series. Constructing an entire episode around the show's title card format is just a genius. This is also another one with a ton of callbacks to previous episodes, which is always fun. And by the end, things just get so wacky that you have to see it for yourself. There's no point in me describing it. It's just a crazy 11 minutes of television, and I wouldn't have it any other way. Number 7, The Waste of Time. I'm a sucker for a good time travel story, and this is a good time travel story. Not only do we get to revisit previous episodes, but we also get some foreshadowing for future episodes. We also get some really cool backstory for Wander and Sylvia, and a great message about not living in the past. It's a great episode. Number 6, The Void. This is just another really creative and fun episode. There's just so many fun and creative visual gags here. And it has one of my favorite musical numbers in the series. Just a classic and iconic episode. Number 5, The Cartoon. This is my pick for the funniest episode of Wander Over Yonder. All the digs at cheap 80s cartoons are just hilarious. And it just feels like a big love letter to the animation industry as a whole. It's even got a hilarious Gravity Falls parody at the end. Just iconic. Number 4, The Wanders. This is just another really creative episode concept, with Wander being split up into all these different versions of himself, and Sylvia having to use their individual personality traits to lure them into fixing him. It's got a really sweet ending too, and a surprisingly very mature message that even if there are parts of our past that we're uncomfortable with, they're still necessary in forming the person we are. That kind of stuff can help give us empathy for other people. Just a fantastic episode all around. Number 3, The Time Bomb. This is easily my favorite Season 1 episode. I love the idea of Sylvia being entered in this big Rainbow Road-esque racetrack. It's just so cool from a visual standpoint. And speaking of visuals, we get some really fun character designs in this one too for the other racers. But at its core, the episode has a very relatable theme about trying to keep your cool while in a stressful situation. This theme is handled very gracefully and with a surprising amount of maturity. It's definitely a top tier episode. Number 2, My Fair Haiti. This is probably the most popular episode of Wander Over Yonder, and for great reason. All of the songs in this episode are absolute bangers, especially I'm the Bad Guy. Just such an iconic character-defining moment for Dominator. I'm also a pretty big fan of the opening number, as its simplicity just works really well for me. And in terms of scale, this is probably the biggest the series has ever gotten, save for maybe the finale. It's another one of those episodes in which we get to see Wander and Hater and Sylvia and Peepers team up, which is always fun. And we find out what Dominator's true plan is, that she doesn't plan on taking over the galaxy, she wants to destroy it. It's just a banger episode, and even if it's only number 2 on my ranking, I can absolutely see why it's a fan favorite of many. And my favorite Wander Over Yonder episode is The Bot. This is a very simple episode, but I think it plays into all of Wander Over Yonder's strengths. Its simple form of storytelling really works in the episode's favor, as it allows us to focus primarily on Wander and Beep Boop's friendship. There's just something so inherently endearing about seeing them hang out together. It's really cute. So when that ending hits, it hits hard. The fact that a robot programmed for evil was able to make a sacrifice like this is just powerful. Made even more so by the fact that Wander never even found out about it. And that final shot, man, it gets me every time. It's just plain heartbreaking. I love it. The bot isn't necessarily the most flashy or even really the most memorable episode of Wander Over Yonder, but it's the one that I have the most amount of personal attachment to. It's just my personal favorite, and not everyone will agree with that, but that's okay. So that was my ranking of every Wander Over Yonder episode. I'm very tired. Please let me know what your favorite Wander Over Yonder episodes are in the comments, and have a cool as heck day. Kirby out.